Arcam's world-class home cinema sources and amplifiers are the result of thousands of design hours. Hours spent utilizing decades of experience in low distortion design to deliver the best possible performance.
We've been building AV receivers for upwards of 20 years now. The goal has been to recreate music accurately. The reason for this is that Hollywood is actually very easy to recreate when Hollywood is often based on an artificial sound effect. These are not references for performance. Our goal is to recreate a piano accurately, equal energy from the left side of the keyboard to the right. That takes some serious engineering skill.
Arcam's latest receivers represent the very best that is available for the demanding home cinema enthusiast. Extreme precision digital techniques are deployed from the very start of the signal chain.
One of the primary enemies to reproducing music or any effect accurately is a phenomenon known as jitter. The effects of jitter are disastrous in a D2A system. They add harshness, brightness, and an unnatural edginess to any sound that you're asked to reproduce. By minimizing jitter, we can remain faithfully accurate to the original source recording.
The flagship AVR 850 and the SR 250 both feature the latest Class G amplification as optimized by Arcam's engineering team.
A Class G amplifier is used to sidestep some of the issues that are apparent in a Class AB design. We use Class G as it has multiple power supplies. Now, the first power envelope, or lower powered section, runs in pure Class A. This eradicates crossover distortion. We then implement a larger power supply only when necessary to recreate large dynamic signals. So what we're looking at here is an amplifier topology that is absolutely clean, free of distortion, but also free from any dynamic constraints. Dirac Live's interface is easy enough for anybody to use, but it does allow us to optimize a room, optimize a system, giving an absolutely stable level of response regardless of acoustic obstacles.
Dirac Live can be found in the Arcam AVR 850 and AVR 550 home cinema receivers and the SR 250 stereo receiver. From start to finish, the process should take between 15 and 35 minutes, depending on the number of speakers in the system. Dirac Live works by addressing three areas: frequency, phase, and impulse. With frequency, Dirac Live implements a default target curve and aims to recreate the response of the perfect loudspeaker in the ideal listening room.
The very best home cinema systems are the systems that offer the same voice through every speaker or the same tonality for every speaker. Dirac Live will implement a default target curve, which is a falling response beyond about 8 kHz. Now, this is theoretically the response of the perfect loudspeaker.
Phase is one of the major issues facing any loudspeaker. Adding a center, surrounds, and subwoofers into the mix magnifies the issue dramatically.
One of the biggest challenges for a loudspeaker designer is to keep the loudspeaker in phase from low to high frequency. Now, only the very best designs stay within a 50-degree phase envelope. Dirac Live will implement mixed phase filters to ensure that the loudspeaker is absolutely in phase from low to high frequency. The effect is very similar to turning the lens on a camera. All of a sudden, the picture will snap into focus.
The final element Dirac addresses is impulse. The technology removes pre-ringing and improves the often disastrous reverb characteristics of the room. This results in more information coming through, delivering vastly improved clarity.
The power of Dirac Live lies in these three areas. It's only when these three areas are addressed correctly that the system will truly sing. The results are instantaneous and dramatic.
Before setting up a system using Dirac Live, there are a number of tasks you need to do.
As with all room optimization systems, Dirac Live works best when it has less to do. We should make every effort to optimize the system with regards to calibration before we run Dirac.
Much of what is required is general best practice system setup. Make sure your speakers are in the best positions for the system you're creating. So if you're working on a Dolby Atmos system, this would be a good time to bring out your positioning guide. Make sure your speakers are aligned and pointing at the main listening position. Making physical changes after running Dirac Live means having to repeat the operation. Make sure your speakers are still sitting correctly. Check for rocking stands and loose or unevenly tightened spikes. Make sure your connecting cables are clean and free of issues such as running HDMI cables next to delicate analog cables. ensure that you adjust the Arcam receiver's speaker settings menu to reflect your setup.
After you've set everything up correctly, simply have a listen to the system with content that you know very well. Is the system sounding bass heavy? Well, if it is, then move the loudspeaker away from the boundaries. If the system is sounding bass light, move the loudspeaker towards a boundary. This will give you increased boundary gain. If the system is sounding too bright, you can trim this out of the system by turning the loudspeaker away from the listening position. This will reduce the high frequency energy. Conversely, if the system is sounding too dull, you can point the loudspeaker directly at the listening position, and this will increase high frequency energy. When the left and right channels are correctly aligned, and when playing mono material, you should experience a central image between the two speakers. This will normally happen when both speakers are of equal distance from the listening position. It's important to remember that the listening position has a very real impact on the sound you will hear, but also the measurements that you will take. Only once you've completed all of these tasks and the system is performing well, is it time to implement Dirac and unleash the system's full potential.
The next step is downloading the Dirac Live software. It works with Mac or PC and can be downloaded from the Arcam website. You also need to ensure your Arcam receiver is on the same network as your laptop when running Dirac Live, as they communicate throughout the process. Now, make sure that in-room noise is cut to a minimum by turning off any air conditioning units and projectors. Use the supplied USB microphone to take measurements. Alternatively, you may wish to take the calibration to a higher level.
I would suggest using a higher performance microphone such as an XTZ Pro calibration kit. This will improve the capture of your measurements, but also improve the performance of the calibration.
Plug the microphone into your laptop's USB socket. Make sure you do this before booting up the Dirac software. Use an adjustable stand for optimal and stable microphone placement. And always make sure the microphone is exactly at head height in the listening position. Open Dirac and it will scan the network for an Arcam AVR to calibrate. Once it has located the receiver, check the speaker configuration reflects your system and ensure your laptop's recording device is set to the USB microphone and not the laptop's own microphone. You need to load your microphone's calibration settings at this point. Settings for the supplied microphone are included in the package you receive when downloading Dirac Live from the Arcam website. When the Arcam receiver display shows measure mode, it is time to set the test tone reference. This is vital, as setting it too high runs the risk of damaging the speakers. Starting with the least sensitive speaker, normally the smallest or the one that is furthest away from the microphone, use the channel volume to set the output of that speaker. Now, use the input trim to adjust each individual speaker to match the reference level. The only exception is the subwoofer, which should be adjusted at the subwoofer itself. Press Proceed when all levels are set. There are 3 modes of measurement available, and we would suggest that you work with the sofa mode unless you are configuring a large-scale cinema. It's now time to measure, making sure there is nothing between the microphone and the speakers and keeping as quiet as possible. Press Start and the test tone begins. You will see a graphical representation of it at the bottom of the screen. The test tone will play through all speakers and return to the left channel to confirm that the sweep is relevant. Once this measurement is complete, move the microphone to the next position, always keeping the microphone at ear height. Continue with 9 measurements. When all the measurements have been captured, save the project and give it a relevant name such as AVR 850 measured, then press Proceed. The next screen shows the measurements of the system in the form of a blue trace. The default Dirac target response is shown in orange. If you are happy with the results, simply press the Optimize button. Within a minute, the data will be processed and a green curve will appear. This is the Dirac optimized response based on the target curve. 2 different viewing options are available per speaker. Clicking on the Impulse tab will switch the display to show the improvements in impulse response. Blue is measured and green is optimized. Save your project again with a name such as AVR 850 Optimized. Press Proceed and you will have the opportunity to drag and drop your project into the receiver. Dirac now transfers these settings to the receiver, which then makes any necessary adjustments. Once completed, the Arcam receiver's display changes from measure to audition mode.
You can choose to listen to any of the changes in this mode, and the volume control slider within Dirac will control the volume of the AVR. However, you can simply exit the Dirac application and use the AVR as normal. It is important to remember that Dirac will only load level settings into the Dirac on position for the level setting page. For accurate A/B comparison, it will be necessary to adjust the EQ off level settings to match the Dirac EQ on level settings.
It is now time to listen to the results using suitable test material you know well.
When you switch Dirac on, the differences should be astounding. You'll hear far more low-level detail, greater dynamic impact, and everything will sound more real. And we could choose to stop here. However, one of the beauties of Dirac is it does offer us the ability to infinitely adjust the loudspeaker's response or target curve.
To learn more about how to do that, watch our Advanced Dirac Live video. Arcam's range of world-class home cinema and stereo receivers feature Dirac Live, advanced room calibration software that allows a system to be fine-tuned for the best possible performance. Once a system has been optimized using Dirac's default curves, the opportunity exists for the advanced user to have a closer look at the elements that have been corrected and further improve the performance.
Whilst Dirac Live's target response is theoretically the perfect loudspeaker, it will bypass any intentional voicing characteristics that a loudspeaker engineer may have implemented in a design. You can often easily spot intentional roll-offs, intentional mid-range peaks in a loudspeaker design. Now, using Dirac's infinite flexibility, you can choose to follow engineered-in characteristics.
This advanced tuning has the potential to dramatically improve performance, but it is also an area where mistakes can be made. So we would suggest small steps, make single changes, then stop and listen. Be prepared to go back and listen time and again. And make sure you save your project regularly.
The reason to change the curve is twofold. Dirac finds it far easier to reduce or remove a big peak in response rather than to fill a big drop in response. We may want to adjust the curve to follow some peaks, some troughs. This will make the speaker's life far easier from a mechanical point of view.
It is also important to consider your customer's taste and how they want their system to perform.
A customer may have their listening position against the back wall. Now, this will increase the bass level, increase boundary gain. Dirac will try and flatten this response, but to the customer, they may perceive it as us taking too much bass away from the system. At this point, you may want to adjust the curve and add a little of that reinforcement or boundary gain back in again.
You can tweak the speaker's output grouped in pairs or individually by adjusting the orange trace. And you can always check where Dirac last optimized the system by looking at the green trace. Work through the changes you make, saving regularly, re-uploading and listening.
Pay careful attention to the way that Dirac has measured your subwoofer in the system. Take a look at any dips in the response. It is often a good idea to re-engineer some of the dips in, and this will prevent the subwoofer from performing excessive cone excursions.
The changes you make at this stage primarily affect the tonality of the system. The corrections made to improve phase and detail-revealing impulse remain in place.
So make sure you trust your ears. The Arcam receivers have the ability to sound real, believable, enjoyable. Dirac Live is simply a tool to help you along this path.